So, Neil, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Neil Casey. I've been a member of Bookham Baptist Church for a number of years, probably 7 or 8 years now. I live in the local area in Fetcham with my wife Rachel, our two boys Ben and Samuel, and our cocker spaniel Lucy.
And Neil, just in regard to kind of your faith and work, just tell us a little bit about kind of your sense of vocation and calling in your work.
Sure. Um, well, I very much see faith and work coming together for me. I don't really hold with this idea that there's a separation between the two. In fact, the work that I do is very much kind of faith inspired. I would say I'm currently working at CAFOD, which is the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, and I run their humanitarian department there. So what that involves me in doing is managing the response to the Ebola crisis, the current Ebola crisis in Sierra Leone, overseeing the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, responding to big DEC emergencies such as the emergency in Gaza earlier last year, and also the ongoing crisis in Syria. And I suppose the reason I have got involved with that kind of work is because of, I feel a strong sense of commitment to the those who are on the margins, those who are vulnerable, those who lack any voice or the ability to speak out or fend for themselves, those who are in poverty. And I think it's fair to say that in any kind of humanitarian crisis situation like the ones I've just described, you have people who are living with acute poverty. And I can point to numerous references in the Old Testament and Jesus's references in the New Testament, which show that his heart was very much for those who are vulnerable, those who are on the margins, those who are in poverty, and those who are in need. And so that the work that I do is very much, I see that as part of my outworking my relationship with Jesus as a Christian, and very much part of my walk with Him.
That's fascinating. Just give us maybe a couple of one or two sort of little stories, maybe that really illustrate how your faith and that work sort of comes together, and how you see God at work in your life through that action.
Okay. Well, maybe a couple of things. There's a scripture that lives with me very much, which is God sets the lonely in families, and it's quite personal to me. Um, and if I look back at my life, my life is pretty much a kind of living testimony to the truth and reality of that scripture. There was a time when I was estranged from both my mum and my dad, and God intervened in my life in such a way that I became part of a Christian family. Somebody took me in, that brought me into the church, the Broad Church family, and set me on my way in terms of my walk with God. And that that event, those life events for me, really demonstrated to me that God is concerned about the vulnerable and those who are excluded and in need. Um, and I suppose that's been a motivating factor for me throughout my life. Um, I've worked in a number of different situations. So, for instance, I work for a Christian charity looking after people with HIV and AIDS at a time when that wasn't a particularly attractive or thing to do.
Mm.
And I'm about to finish my time with CAFOD and to join an organisation called MEDAIR, which is a strongly Christian charity, international Christian charity, based in Switzerland, but with a UK office. who's is working in places like Somalia, for instance. Now, Somalia is probably the poorest country in the world globally, and they're reaching out to people who are in abject poverty and in real need. And I see what I would be doing with them is identifying with the vulnerable, those who are in poverty and need, and doing that as a way of walking, as doing the things that Jesus would do, and being good news in that situation to people who really need it.
Thank you very much.